I'm getting the light out from behind me.
The pinnacle of human perspective.
You can start anytime. I'll always come back.
Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I am here joined with Eileen from One Channel, YouTube channel. How
Hey,
are you doing today?
Hey, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here, especially to talk about this material I've been going over, because it's been so exciting for me to look at this, and it's really opened up just my way of thinking about things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I'm really enjoying it. I've never read this material.
Well, it's definitely something that's really got me hooked, and I was really thinking about how in the beginning with the Mandela Effect, I was noticing how some of the changes seemed like they had messages about, you know, the left brain, the right brain, and I started thinking about I am as the left brain, because I am is sort of your selfish side of you, you know. But when you think of this I am material as, you can say I am and think of your personal self. But then you can think of I am and think of your right brain self, which is everyone. It's everything, you know? So there's sort of two I ams. If you're in the left brain I am, you're just thinking of your specific self. But if you're in the right brain I am, you're really thinking of the whole, all of us as one, the divine nature of everything, you know?
I do. And I think maybe ascension, or part of ascension, is the balance between the left brain and the right brain, because we all know one's analytical and one's creative. And maybe you can't live completely in the creative world at the expense of the analytical, nor should we live in the analytical, logical world at the expense of the creative. So maybe balance and ascension is the interplay evenly between left brain, right brain. I am myself, and I am human. I'm collective.
That's
Maybe.
right. Yeah, and I was thinking how if we did have the full divine knowledge of God, like the material talks about, we would make different choices. We would actually be in the will of the divine Father, God, whatever the source energy is, all the time, because we would know what's best for ourselves. So to be in the will of God, or the will of the divine nature that is running through all of us, is really what we want. We just don't know that. You know, that's sort of what I'm starting to realize.
Yeah,
It's best for the
interesting.
whole.
I totally get where you're coming from, because when you start to say, I am the physical representation of God on earth, of the divine on earth in 2017, some people go, oh my God, you're not God. Who do you think you are? They get so angry. And in reality, if you recognize that you are a part of divine spirit here in the flesh on earth, in this time and space, you suddenly have more responsibility to be good, to be loving, to be forgiving, to give more, as much as you can. It has the opposite effect. People think if you think you're God, you're going to walk all over us and take everything because you think you have power over the rest of us. But in reality, if you are merely a part of the divine energy here, you suddenly feel responsible for, like, I don't even kill, like, in Florida we have saw palmetto bugs. They're like 2 to 4 inch cockroaches that fly. And they don't like the rain, and when it rains outside, they come in through the dryer vents and the dishwasher vents, and I can't even kill them. I have to literally chase them down, even if it takes like a half an hour, catch them and release them, because I am a part of divine spirit. What right have I got to take that bug's life away? So it's actually being a part of the divine made me a better person. Not a
I understand that. We had those in Atlanta when I lived there. They're huge, and they
They're
fly.
They're scary.
Yeah, gosh, it took me a while to get used to them, but yeah, we had them in Atlanta, and you'd see them. They'd be like 2 inches in size, and they, like
And
you
they're
said,
fast.
yeah,
And I've got a cup ready, I've got a paper plate ready, and it could take me a long time to catch it under chairs and dressers, but I will not kill it, not since I connected with the divine. When I realized I was part of the divine and part of God, and I just couldn't kill anything anymore. I was done
Well,
with
back then
killing.
I did kill them, but they made a big mess because they're so huge. So yeah, getting them out of your house, house is the
Yeah,
better
that's
way to go.
instant karma. That's your karma.
Exactly. Oh, that's so funny. But yeah, definitely. And you know, one thing about just to get back to what you were saying about how people think it's like a bad thing, or like you're saying you're God or whatever. If you think you exist outside of God, or that you have the power to be alive outside of the divine power that brings us to life, that's, to me, once I started seeing this, that was almost equally as you know, sacrilegious, if you will, than saying that you don't have God in you, making you alive. Like,
Yeah,
so
I
you're saying,
agree.
you know what I mean?
If you're out of the divine, that's giving yourself the reason to go and do something bad. Well, I'm not divine, so I'm going to go steal this from someone or take advantage of this person because I'm not divine. It gives you kind of an excuse for bad action. Also, it makes you vulnerable, and you could possibly be a victim of, if you're not part of the divine, you're vulnerable. Nobody's got your back. And that's where we get into these false archetypes of demons and Satan and Baphomet and Set, all these names for evil energy,
Mhm.
which we'll talk about later. Those are all archetypes, which people call archons, but they're all swimming in your consciousness. They're not physical entities out there hiding in the bushes trying to get you. You know,
Yeah. And I think we get that
what people,
idea with,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, with Jesus, because you watch these shows where Jesus was tempted and Satan comes down and there's this interaction between two individuals. But really, if you can really see it like we deal with it daily, with, sort of the demon and the angel on your shoulders, how they always would do in cartoons, you can make the proper choice or you can make this other choice. And which one are you going to choose? And I think with the, like I was saying with Jesus, we've seen it portrayed so many times, like there was this outside interaction between two individuals that you don't realize that it could have happened all within his consciousness, the temptation of Christ.
Yeah, when he went away and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and that put him into obviously a different, like, gamma rays instead of beta and alpha rays, and a different state of consciousness.
Hmm.
Yeah, he could have. Well, put it this way: if I'm not trying to like shake up anybody's solid belief in Satan, the devil, and demons, but if Satan existed, he would have walked up to you by now and shaken your hand and offered you a mansion, a yacht, as much money as you could ever spend. The fact that he, which is kind of unfair, they make it a male, right? The fact that he and none of his minions have walked up in a suit and tie and shaken your hand and introduced themselves kind of shows that, yeah, this exists within your head. This exists within your consciousness, within your heart, within your being. It's something internal that needs to be faced and overcome. Kind of like, those Star Wars movies when Luke was battling with a demon, the mask came off and it was him. And he was like, whoa, I'm fighting myself. It's because
Yeah,
that's where the true demons are. Are we going to be tempted to be selfish or greedy or resentful or jealous or angry or hurtful,
definitely. Yeah, that's a really good point, that we all really have to overcome our own. And that's, it gets back to the material. One of the topics I wanted to cover was talking about how everyone's made mistakes. And, you've got to realize that there's different degrees of mistakes. But like Jesus said, if, he who is without sin cast the first stone, no one is sin free, quote unquote sin free, if you think of it like that. We've all done things that we're not proud of. We all need redemption in some fashion or another. We've
Yeah.
done people wrong. So, when you think of it that way, you can actually, it helps you deal with other people's mistakes a little bit better and to be more forgiving, because we've all done things wrong.
Yeah, I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes, and I'm not sure that a perfect being could actually exist on this plane, in this dimension, in this matter. I'm not sure, because I've read about Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and I'm not sure that they were perfect beings. They might have made their mistakes that they were sorry for along the way because they were human, you
Mhm.
know? So the difference I find, I I think reading A Course in Miracles brought me to this point, but I also read the Seth materials. I read the Raw Law of One materials and a whole bunch of other stuff. All the religious texts from Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So I think what really brought me to this point was the Course in Miracles, which focuses on the collective, that you are you, you're Shane, I'm Eileen, but we're also human, and you're human and I'm human. And that's an automatic connection that we are also one.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do something that I want that hurts you in any way, then that has a negative consequence that many people call karma. And if I do something that helps me that doesn't hurt you in any way, it doesn't come with any negative consequence. It doesn't come with a karma. So it's kind of like melding all these books and religions and philosophies into one theory that allows you to accept the divinity within you and be kind, humble, helpful, and responsible.
But aren't we really trying to achieve a point where we sort of leave, you know, the scripture of Jesus comes to mind where he says, when the mind, let's see, the eye is the light of the body, and when the eye be single, then the light shines throughout the whole body. I believe it's Matthew 6:22 or something like that. But it's sort of rising above the duality, right? I mean, isn't that really what ultimately we're trying to do?
You're quoting more than that. What you're doing is you're getting back to source of the information, which is also the third eye. In Hinduism and Buddhism, there is a theory that when Jesus disappeared for many years, he was studying Eastern pre-Buddhist philosophy. And you're quoting Mark, and you're talking about the third eye, the divine eye that sees all people as one. I've studied quantum physics since I was 12, and I'm like 56 now. And I've gone beyond being one with humans. I see us as being one with everything, with the universe. If something exists in a planet over there, well, we're also one with that because we both exist in the same space, but it's just a bigger space.
Right. I totally agree with you. And I'm getting to that point too, where I realize that we're in this ocean of divine energy, and certainly we take our form, and it appears that we have our individuality, but at the source of it, we are all part of this ocean of divine God, if you will.
Yeah, it's kind of like if the universe was the ocean, and there were fish swimming, and there were octopus on the bottom. And the fish said, I am life in this ocean. And the octopus said, no, you're not. I am. I'm the life in this ocean. And then the fish said, no, you're not, because you don't look like me. I'm the life in this ocean. So in other words, life in the ocean of the universe can take on many, many, many different forms, and it doesn't negate the other forms. Just because it doesn't look like you, think like you. Yeah?
And that's why I use water a lot, because you know, you think of if you were to actually break down the octopus and the fish, you would see they're primarily made of water, just like us. We're like 2/3 water or something. So water to me is a really good explanation for kind of the whole, and it's even a parable, the parable of the fishes that Jesus used. He used water, and he said it's in water that you live, move, and have your being. And we don't see the water or God because it's always been there. We've always been in it. And it's like fish don't see the water because they've always been in it, you know?
Yeah, they can't see the water because it's all around them. If you tried to explain it to them, it's like we can't see air. We know it's there, but we can't see it unless, you know, it gets dirty and somebody pollutes it. But it's all around me right now. And what if the air all around us is the energy that connects all the humans? We're all breathing the same air. So that kind of makes us like cells or particles in the lungs of the earth. Like, what if you took a lung and the lung had consciousness, and then each individual cell did the breathing? And each cell then started to fight with each other and kill each other off, you know, because, you know, they wanted more oxygen. what would happen to the lung? The lung would collapse. So as the cells of consciousness on Earth, which make up the Earth consciousness, the highest consciousness maybe, don't know about that. There could be higher consciousness all around us that we can't see or access right now. And what if we're fighting each other off, trying to dominate the consciousness on Earth, and in doing so, we are literally killing our own organism, ourselves?
I do believe that. It's like we're committing suicide in a way, because we don't realize that, you know, it's like a cancer in the body. It's eating away at the body, and, you know, it's destroying the whole body, but it maybe doesn't realize it because it sees itself as it's, you know, a separate entity in the body.
I think the ruling elite that some people call the cabal, shadow government, Illuminati, or, you know, just generally the worst people, the most insane people on the earth, as far as I'm concerned, I think they see them as a cancer. And I think as more and more people awaken to the fact that, hey, we don't really want to go kill people in the Middle East. We don't really want our brothers and sisters in Africa to starve to death while we feast. You know, we don't really want to frack the earth, because that's really bad for the earth. It's bad for the air, the methane gases that are released, the instability of the continents and the shift. You know, once people awaken to this, the ruling elite are really going to have to scramble to get what they want done, because nobody's going to go along with it.
Yeah, and I think at the heart of it, you know, they're just as deceived as any of us normal people that make our mistakes. I don't really think they realize what they're doing, you know. And it's sort of, it's just, that's actually where we got to get to that point where we can recognize what they're doing as a negative thing, but not to be judgmental about it towards them, because a lot of them, that's just all they ever knew, you know.
Yeah, they've been raised in the environment, and they've been, what's the word? Groomed. They've been groomed for these positions. And it's amazing that so very, very few people are actually committing the most harm on the planet in terms of chemtrails, GMOs, addictive medicines, things like that. But if we try to fight them with their own negative means, it's just throwing fire on the fire. You get a bigger fire. We have to find a way to change that without necessarily fighting them in their own way. And I find the easiest way is to do what you just did, and that's to forgive them. I'm like, people have to be insane to do this to the planet and to do this to humanity. So how can I hate an insane person? If they're mentally ill, they're unstable, their soul is sick, I have to forgive them. I can't hate them for being, like, you know, just not right.
Yeah, because many of them have really psychopathic tendencies. I mean, I can't fathom doing some of the things you hear that they're doing, and I don't think anyone in their right mind would do those things.
Well, that's a good segue then to the information that you're presenting. Is there's other sources of it. The Alice Bailey books on esoteric healing, I think there's like 24 of them or 28 of them. I've read about 4 of them and I stopped. I had enough. And the Bon religion, which predates Buddhism, they talked about mastering the elements and the matter around us as divine energy on Earth. But the likes of Aleister Crowley and the Freemasons and the ruling elite got a hold of this secret information, and they're using the same information in a negative way to control the masses and get what they want for selfish means. But the original information presented in the 1900s by Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, who created all these wonderful Waldorf schools, and Alice Bailey, took the same information and was using it for light, for good, for positivity, for ascension, and for growth. But it's the same information. You can either use it for selfish means and become negative, or you can use it for good for all and become positive. But it's the same information. The information doesn't change, but how you use it does. And that's what's coming through your I Am discourse. That information is coming through in a positive way.
And I think that's important for people to know, that when you hear any of this information and you think it has roots in other things like Luciferianism and things like that, they might have used some of this information and built upon it what they've done, but this doesn't get into human sacrifice and things like that that you hear about that. They've just taken a segment of this, just like Christianity. Every single religion or group sort of has their extreme cases or extremists that have taken it and perverted it or used it for selfish gain or reasons, and it's not any reason to sort of just shut it out and not even to listen to it with an open heart and open mind,
I think most of your community here have kind of come to the realization that any religious text currently available has been edited over and over and over again for political reasons. And I think they probably know that the original stories of the Savior and the flood are all found in the Sumerian texts in Mesopotamia, Babylon, which is current day Iraq, and that those originated from ancient Egypt. They probably go way back before ancient Egypt, but we don't have a record of them, or we haven't found that record yet. So when you look at the Bible and you're a Christian and it includes the Old Testament, doesn't God tell Abraham to go out and sacrifice his son? I know he changes his mind and says kill a lamb instead, but come on, you know, is the religion that you're taking to heart as God's word all good? Is it all positive? If it isn't, then it doesn't work for you anymore, and that's what kind of moves you on into other explorations of philosophy instead of dogmated political religion, don't you think?
Definitely, and I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding because of the way religion and the church has put the Bible together in this single book, instead of showing that it's really a library of ancient writings, and it's not complete.
Yeah, philosophy.
Yeah, and that Jesus, when he spoke about his Father, he wasn't actually talking about Jehovah or Yahweh like they teach you in church. He actually told those religious leaders that their father was the devil, and I think that's an important point. And you know, just to bring up a certain point, before the whole Mandela effect sort of opened my eyes to what was going on with the Bible and everything, I had come across the scripture that made me realize that the idea of hell and a God that wants to, you know, permanently torture people. There's a scripture in it's in Luke 11:11. I think of it as, you know, the 11:11, a portal to sort of exit out of that hell line of thinking. And it said, Jesus asked, if a son asked for bread from a father, who would give him a stone? Or if he asked for fish, who would give him a serpent? Or if he asked for an egg, who would give him a scorpion? And then he says, if you then, being evil, would not do such a thing, and you would give, and you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father, the Holy Spirit, give the Holy Spirit to those who ask? And when I look at that, that's completely contrary to how the church teaches that, you know, because I would never send my child to hell, and if I'm evil, and I wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't permanently torment my child for eternity, then you know, our heavenly Father wouldn't do such a thing.
Yeah, the problem with current day scripture is so many hands have rewritten it. And I know, how many books was it, 13 or 16, that Nicaea threw out of the Bible in 366 AD? You know, heretical books, because it didn't say what they wanted the Bible to say. So yeah,
I think John was really the only one that sort of had some of the Gnostic traditions left in there, and they got rid of a bunch of the Gospels.
I guess the Bible and the teachings of Jesus are the best part of the Bible. I mean, really, those are the ones, you know, do unto others as you would like to have done unto yourself. They're the more beautiful philosophical scriptures within the Bible. But once you take those on board and you want to know even more, that's when I think people step outside of the religion of their birth and start exploring other religious philosophy. Because in terms of history, there's a great book by Mark Booth called The Secret History of the World, and he's in London, and he wrote this book just on the secret societies, just on the Illuminati, the Freemasons, from as far back as he could trace it, which is around 2,000 years ago, to present day. And that's a great book. to kind of get an idea of how the Freemasons, ruling Illuminati, use secret societies and secret information that they don't want anybody else to know about, so that they can control the masses to get what they want. And once you know what they believe, it becomes much easier to not support their agenda anymore. And one of the things that I've discovered is that 100 years ago, a little bit more, there were people like Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, and Alice Bailey writing about how to be and act divine on earth in matter, not as God, but as a part of divine energy.
Mhm.
And the story is that in the Bible, when Eve was tempted to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, the tree of information, the serpent came up and said, eat the fruit. Well, in ancient Egypt, the serpent represents wisdom. And today, if you look at a doctor's symbol for the medical association and everything that has to do with medicine, it's two serpents winding up a staff, because that's the wisdom coming up, and the information. So they held that Lucifer, which in Greek translates as bringer of light, bringer of information, that Lucifer was the good angel telling Adam and Eve, eat from the tree of knowledge and you will know everything. And that the Christian, Judaic, Islamic God came down and said, no, you must be sheep in my flock. You may not know anything. So the Abrahamic religions are all Middle Eastern. They all share the same God. Judaism, Christianity came from Judaism, and Islam came from Judaism.
Mhm.
So they're all interrelated. And these people said, no, actually, the bringer of light is trying to give you the information that you are part of the divine on earth and that you can actually work miracles here if you so will. And people like Aleister Crowley and that group at the same time took the same information and they twisted it and they made it secret and they used it to control others, to oppress others, to hurt others. But they used the same information. And that's why they have all their little secret handshakes and secret societies and secret groups. I mean, Skull and Bones at Harvard has given us like, what, 7 or 8 presidents?
Mhm.
You know, and they have to like lie in a coffin and do and say unspeakable things in secret because that gives them their power. And I think that their God is Baphomet or Lucifer, which is why they're practicing Satanists
And
without calling it.
that only served to sort of feed this whole idea of the serpent in the garden being the evil one, because once you see they follow him, and then it sort of perpetuates this whole idea that, you know, this is this good versus evil. The serpent is evil, but, you know, if you follow the plumed serpent, or, you know, the serpent all down through history, you'll see it in a lot of Eastern cultures.
Oh,
like
China, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they celebrate the dragon, and a lot of the Mesoamerican cultures with the plumed head.
The Mayan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is totally.
Quetzalcoatl, yep. Yep, they've got names for it, which is always information. Ancient Aliens on TV always says, those are aliens. But, you know, they could just be archetypes in humanity's mind saying that that's where wisdom comes from. It comes from above. You know, I don't know. I'm not a Satanist, and I love the teachings of Christ, but I am no longer a Catholic, and I'm not a Buddhist. I kind of like, I appreciate all world religions, and I find them all lacking, except for the Native American Indian religions. I find those very not lacking. They're very respectful of the earth. They're very respectful of the animals. They're very respectful of each other. Yeah. So those are the least lacking religions that I've come across. How about you?
I think, I always think of it the other way around. I think of, you know, everybody sort of has a piece of the puzzle, but nobody has the whole thing. And that's sort of where I came with the whole unbiased and on the fence thing, is that I realized that the more you kind of stayed on the fence and you could have an overview of all of these different views, you could, you know, glean the information you need to glean from everywhere.
And move on and leave the negative behind. So Basically, you've got a bunch of very few people on the earth. I think it's Marduk that they actually, I don't know. I can't keep up. I try to read this history and information of who's ruling the planet, but it's hard to keep up because they do everything in secret. You can take the information that you are a divine being on earth capable of miracles, and you can use that and steer it towards the selfish to oppress others so you get more, or you can use it to help others and use it in a positive light so everybody gets more. Those are the two choices. Once you realize that you are a divine being in a material form, matter on this planet, you can go left or you can go right. And again, it gets us back to the beginning of the conversation, left brain, right brain. You got choices to make.
But one of the things I'm starting to realize with this material is that if you're ultra religious and judgmental, you're really sort of serving the same master as the elite, because you're both all on the left side of the brain. You're both all about the I am, the individual. You're not about the group. So it's almost like you need this balance to realize that, you know, just the duality of it that we were talking about, getting away from the good versus bad and just being. And when you are truly for the I am presence, divine presence, you are for everything, because it is everything.
Maybe that's another key to ascension. You said this duality. So we're living in a dualistic world that has light and dark, hot and cold, up and down, male and female, left and right. I mean, it's so dualistic. But you can always choose the middle ground. You don't have to go hot, you don't have to go cold, you can go warm or cool. You don't have to go light or dark. You can always choose the middle ground. So maybe the whole point of being a divine being, part of the divine, not the whole divine, but part of the divine in matter, is to constantly make those choices every moment, left, right, good, bad. And maybe at the end of it, if you've chosen more good, positive, loving, collective choices, maybe you get to graduate off of a dualistic planet and go to a dimension or an environment that's less dualistic and more light, more positive, more collective, more kind, more generous, more compassionate, more loving, more forgiving. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So maybe that's part of a ascension process, is having to make that choice moment to moment.
I think just a point I wanted to make while we were talking about the Adam and Eve story, that I was blown away when I realized that if you just read that story just as it is, without anyone telling you what it means or anything, you realize that they're both told something by each of the characters. The serpent says their eyes will be open, and then the other character says, no, you'll die. And the day that you eat, you will die. And at the end of it, the God character, the ones that we think of as the one that we think of as the positive character, was the one that lied to them, and no one realizes that when they read the story.
Oh, that's why the ruling elite take it as, well, the serpent was the really good guy and the God character was the bad guy, and they're like perverting or bastardizing the information themselves.
Yeah,
it's interesting. They're using that as the reason why. I think it's all, they're using scripture to defend and prove that actually they're right. You know, their satanic practices are the correct practices, and they're not. They're very, very, very wrong.
Well, when you look at the whole idea of these two brothers, well, I don't know if you believe in the whole ancient Sumer, the tablets and everything, that these are actually the sons of Anu. What were their names? Enki and Enlil is this god and serpent character. Do you believe in that, or?
I prefer the Oxford publication translations than the Zachariah Stitchin ones, although he is like the expert on it, because I hold the belief that just because they're 5,000 years old and very, very old doesn't make them very, very true. That would be like a catastrophe, an extinction level catastrophe hitting the earth, but somebody hid the Harry Potter series in a cave, and in 5,000 years somebody digs out the Harry Potter series and goes, oh my God, they flew on broomsticks and played Quidditch, and you know, would take that text as truth. So I see the Sumerian stories as being kind of retellings of the tales of ancient Egypt, with Osiris and Set and Thoth and Isis and all of those. You know, I see them as another step in our religious philosophizing.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
Because
see
I
a
knew
little
like
window. Yeah.
the Noah story originated from the Sumer tablets, but I didn't realize that actually the Egyptian stuff predated the Sumer stuff.
It
So,
does.
oh,
By a
okay.
couple of thousand years. So you've got this Egyptian hierarchy of gods doing their dastardly deeds, and their good deeds 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago, and that's where the record stops, except for Göbekli Temple,
Mhm.
whatever, in Turkey. They haven't found any texts there, but that's 12,000 years old. So if they could get some texts out of that temple, we'd have more stories that predate the ancient Egyptian. So you got all these stories, and then in Iraq, Mesopotamia, which became the capital was Sumer,
Mhm.
and it became the Sumerian text. They borrowed heavily from the Egyptian, and then when Judaism was written, it borrowed almost 90% of its material from the Mesopotamian Sumerian myths.
Ah, okay.
But myths are based on truth. Are myths true? Are they not true? Like, was there a King Arthur? Probably. Was there a Noah? Was there a flood? Probably. Myths don't mean it's all made up and not factual. It just means it happened so long ago. It's been retold by so many different people in so many different places. They've all added their own little flares to it. Their own.
I think an important thing to keep in mind when you think about those is there was a time when not everything could be written down. It was sort of, the dad tells the kids the story, they tell their kids, and it's passed down word of mouth for a while until someone finally writes it down or etches it
I
in stone,
wonder I wonder if the stories of a savior who will die and come again, that's even King Arthur. King Arthur died, went to Avalon, and he is the king who will return. Dionysus in ancient Greek was the savior who died and will return again. Christ, who died and will return again. Osiris died and did return. His pieces, he was cut up by his brother Set. They were the sons of I can't remember the names. Net and Nu were the ancient male and female gods out in space. And his brother Set cut him up into pieces, and his sister, who was his wife, which is kind of gross, found all the pieces on Earth and put him back together, except for his.
Oops. Did I lose you here? Let's see if we can. Oh, wait, I'm only frozen over here. One moment, everyone. Can you hear me there? Let's see if we can get her to reconnect. All right, so I'll take this time to make sure my audio is still coming through. I'll go to the chat room and we will give Eileen a moment to come back in. Want to thank everybody. I'm going to look through and make sure I didn't miss any questions. I've been heavily into this conversation. I want to thank everyone for hopping in here and for being so great. Oh, here we have Eileen.
I don't know what happened. I just disappeared.
Oh, it's okay.
Hey, this is a good proof, guys. Don't put your money into Ether. If you put your money into Ether, it can disappear. I just did.
Okay, I'm trying to remember what we were talking about. Okay, so when you were talking about Set, is that the, I guess, the son of Isis, the original Isis goddess, married?
She's the brother. She's the brother. Like Net and Nu were out in space somewhere, and they came together and created humans. And they created a bunch of brothers and sisters, like they did in Olympia with the Greeks, and like they did with the Romans, and like they did with the Vikings. And Osiris and Set were brothers, and their sister was Isis. But it's
Okay.
kind of sad. Back in the pharaonic days, they all married their brothers and sisters and their aunts and uncles. You know, they believed they were keeping the bloodline pure, kind of like the ruling elite does now with the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, etc., and the queens and kings of England and Europe do or did. And Set was the bad brother, and he cut Osiris up into pieces and hid parts of his body all over the world, Earth. And Isis, Osiris's wife, went and found all the pieces and put him back together again. So he died and was resurrected. So this resurrection idea is everywhere. You know, it's part of who we are. It's part of humanity. And I think it might be because instinctively we believe in reincarnation. Instinctively we know we are immortal and that we live forever. And the way we can express that is in these myths of King Arthur and religious myths.
Right. Yeah, they serve as a great story of our own personal. It's sort of like the whole hero's journey archetype, you know?
Yeah, the hero's journey. Each one of us is on the hero's journey. We are the heroes of our own story.
I really feel like that too, because I feel like right before the whole Mandela effect thing happened, I was at that death point. I mean, I didn't physically die, but I was so dead to life and I was so down about everything. I mean, even the good of life seemed like such a downer and such, you know, it just all seemed laborious to me, you know? And
do you think that helped you to become spiritually aware? Do you think you had to go through the storm to see the light after the storm?
I really do, because before that time, not that I was suicidal, but I never could understand anyone that wouldn't want to just work it out and just see how it plays out or whatever. But I had reached this point where, you know, I never would have killed myself, but I wouldn't have been upset if I had a heart attack. In fact, there was a few times when I had chest pains, I was like, oh gosh, is this finally it? And I was sort of excited about it, you know what I mean? Which I never would have been like that. I was always fearful of death, but, you know, since then
I had a similar experience. I grew up in Egypt. My teenage to young adult years were there. And I reacted very badly to an injection. They were giving us injections every year for like smallpox and yellow fever, things that you never even got in America. And I was technically dead for a short period of time. And I was only 17 years old and I was resuscitated. And when I came back, I completely remembered all my time in the room watching the resuscitation process. So I came back knowing you don't die. You might leave your body when you die, but your consciousness is still there. It still exists, which served me to make me feel more fearless in what I do in life. But it wasn't until I became aware of the chemtrails, the GMOs, and are you still there? Because I lost your image.
Yeah, I just tried to speed up the stream a little bit. It was glitchy, but I'm still here.
It wasn't until I became aware of basically all the negativity of humanity, and I got really angry at the world, and I said, you know, oh God, wouldn't it be great if an asteroid just hit the planet, reset, new life, and that gives life a chance to be good. It wasn't until I realized that the majority of humans are really good people, just like me, and the minority are bad, that I could forgive everybody and say, no, I don't want to die. I don't want the planet to end. I want to give us a chance to readjust and focus more on the positive and the compassionate natures that we have than the negative, greedy natures. But can I say, Shane, right now, humanity rewards the greediest people with the most money. And the greediest people with the most money get the most power. So until we stop rewarding insanity, sociopathic tendencies, psychopathic tendencies, we're really going to be oppressed by the people that we put into those positions of power who are extremely selfish and greedy. And then we give them the reins to government, and we give them the keys to the banks and the education systems and the healthcare system. So I kind of feel like until we step up and be responsible for our society and say, I'll do that, I'll do the education, I'll take care of the money, the finance, I'll run for office, we can't really complain about who we get oppressing us, because we feed their negativity with money and with positions of power.
Well, what do you think about the I am material when it talks about people in government positions, how we can sort of project our I am presence, you know, towards them? I guess you've read, that's been
I
sort of
did.
throughout it. So is that
I
our
like
best
that.
way of doing it?
I think so, because this material says that they out there who are pressing you because they're your government and your bankers are a projection of you saying, that's what I want to be, or that's what I want to attain to. And they're doing it. They're showing you that you also can become an oppressor. You can become greedy. You can control others. So in that sense, this is a really difficult lesson, because it's saying to fix that out there, the evil bankers, government, whatever, energy companies that aren't using free, healthy energy, clean energy, but using, you know, the dirty energies. We can't fix them until we fix what's inside of us. And we don't want to attain anymore to what they have. Right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's what your material says. And I'm like, okay, I could see the whole planet being a reflection of my beliefs in my head. And then you go, well, does the world exist out there? Is it just me? Did I make
Right.
Shane up? Did I make up YouTube? Did I make
Yeah.
up everything?
Yeah, because if you think about it, when we're dreaming in night and we have people in our dreams talking to us and things like that, those people were all in our heads. I mean, how do we know that when we're awake, it's not a similar situation where we're in our own simulation and this is our own dream? Maybe these other people exist, but they're also in their own dream, and that our reality will indeed change if we can go within and change it. I mean, when you think of it, that we're all this divine energy of God, it is sort of that way. In a way, you know what I mean?
But that gives you even more control, because if you change your internal beliefs on what you want, you might repel those people who want the negative, and you might draw to you people who want the same as you. So that would make sense. You know how they say in psychology that if you can't believe it to achieve it, fake it so you
So
can
you
make
make it.
it? Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you pretend it already is that way, eventually you convince yourself that it is that way. So if we ran around going, I live in a compassionate world, I love my government is helping all of us right now, my government is peaceful, it would never drop bombs on other places to help a banking cartel get in and control the money, the finance, and the oil. We would never do that. If you start faking it and believe and saying that out loud,
Hmm.
eventually will you bring that reality into your bubble, and then we'll, like, your bubble has it, my bubble has it, so now we can share a reality because we have the same
Yeah.
philosophy. I
But
mean,
you
I don't
know,
know.
whenever I think of this, my thought is, what about the people with their head in the sand and they believe that anyway? That's sort of my hang up on that whole thought, you
Yeah,
know.
but
Are
think
they
about it.
really helping it out without us even realizing, like, look, having their head in the sand and thinking the government has their best interests at heart is actually helping us out, because they're creating that reality that doesn't really exist, you know?
But except for them, because I have family members who have their head firmly planted in the sand, and none of the GMOs are good for you. You know, they're not chemtrailing the skies. And terrorists are the only reason we drop bombs in the Middle East, is to protect us, you know, so they don't come here and kill us. So I have people with their head firmly in the sand, and they're going to die that way. When they're going to live and die that way and go, you know what, my world was peaceful, my world was, the government was good in my world, there were no chemtrails in my world, and GMOs were good for me. Because
Yeah.
they believe it so firmly, they're going to spend their whole life like that. What we need to really worry about are the people who wake up to the reality and they get angry and they get fearful, and they're just like angry that the world isn't what they thought it was. And that's
Mhm.
where somehow we've got to guide them into forgiveness, love, and peace, so they don't wallow in that space of anger and fear for the rest of their lives,
Yeah,
because
and
that would be a waste of time.
I see how, for the first time in my life, I used to think, you know, I used to really admire the people that would go out and protest and, you know, picket and things like that. I never really did that sort of thing, but, you know, out of laziness more than me disagreeing with it, you know what I mean? Or just too busy with my own
Yep.
thing. But I would look at that, and now when I look at some of these, you know, now that YouTube is out there, and you know, you got all these people recording videos of these protests and putting them up there, and I just see the anger. It's just like the cesspool of anger that's nothing is getting achieved. I realize that this is not a good thing at all. This is, you know, and then a lot of times it will escalate into violence and things like that, and nothing is ever achieved, you know. But what do you do?
I used to see protesting as good, like the Martin Luther King days of protest to bring equal rights and end segregation.
Yeah.
So when I was in my 20s, I became a good little protester. You know, I rode buses to Washington, D.C. with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I thought, I'm helping social change to be more fair. But I don't know that I helped or changed anything. Now I see protest as people acting out of a sense of insecurity and fear that you're not doing what they want you to do. You didn't elect my presidential choice, therefore I'm going to go disrupt everything you do with your presidential choice. You know, it seems selfish. Maybe
Yeah.
they're protesting for their own will to like dominate others, whereas back in the 80s, I thought we were protesting not for ourselves, but to help others. We had a better reason to protest.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, would we have done away with a lot of the, you know, just, you think of the days of Martin Luther King, would we have gotten over the segregation if they hadn't protested back then?
I don't know. I don't think so, because they protested for women to have the right to vote. They threw themselves under carriages and tied themselves to governors' mansions and things. And there must have been some form of protest to end slavery in this country. I know we had a war over it.
Yeah.
So maybe protest used to be the only mechanism to create positive social change. Maybe we've moved beyond that. Maybe there's a different mechanism available for us to collectively achieve positive social change without going out and protesting and getting into fisticuffs with people. Although the government is treating protesters differently now, because where was it that the girl got run over? Was that North Carolina?
Oh, the race riot thing that happened not too long ago?
Yeah, the neo-Nazi
Yeah.
marching. And I'll tell you what, when we used to march against neo-Nazis in Chicago in the 1980s, it was all planned. Their march was planned, and the counter-protest was going to show up. The police were ordered by the government, the governor or the mayor, to cordon off all those roads. So not a single car could get through, even if it wanted to. But now they leave the roads open, they don't cordon them off, and in some instances, the police have spoken out about having to push the two groups together to create the violence. So the government's approaching it differently. It is more dangerous now because the protections that are common sense just don't exist anymore.
So, like you said, maybe because it seems like since the 80s and on, I haven't seen the positive change that I've seen, you know, in decades prior to that, where it was, you know, with segregation and things like that, and just the whole bus boycotts. And there seemed to be a time when it was more effective, but most of my life it hasn't seemed to be very effective. People go out and they'll, you know, for and against abortion and things like that, and nothing ever really changes.
So maybe we've outgrown it as a mode of social change. Maybe we need to evolve and step up to a new peaceful mode.
I agree.
And
now we have the internet too.
Yeah,
YouTube
well,
and things.
we have the internet, but the powers that be don't like the fact that we've used the internet to connect with each other. I mean, I would never have known you, Shane, because we're so many states away, and so many other people I've connected with of a like mind on the internet. You know, the censorship from the powers that be that actually govern the government, govern the finance system, the medicine, the energy. Those are the ones that are now, without net neutrality, going to try to control the internet so that no movements can rise up that can affect their power, their power structures.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it just seems like people of like mind are so few and far between, because I still don't know anyone in my real life. I mean, for all I know, you know, everyone on the internet is fake. I haven't met anyone that really thinks like me in real life. We're so far apart. I know some people have gotten together, so that's not the case, but we are spread out awfully thin, it seems like.
I agree. I agree. Like, you could be a figment of my imagination, and I'm going to just keep believing in you. I'm just going to keep saying Shane is real.
I'm going to keep believing in you too, Eileen. That's funny.
And all these people that I can't see, if you've got comments, they're all part of it too. You know, we're all this community, and we met on your channel, and we started commenting, and we got to know each other on your channel and Affected Collective and Jacob Israel. These are all the positive people trying to say, hey, there is a better way. You are more powerful than you know. That's it. It's like, that's the message.
I'm going to try to have Jacob on early next year when the holidays and everything dies down. I think that would be fun.
That would be fun.
But yeah, all of us are, that's why I can't help but see this Mandela effect as a positive thing, because I would not have met all these people like you and so many others without it, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As soon as matter started changing around me, I was like, thank you, finally, because I've been holding this belief for so long that we could affect matter, that we can change matter, mind over matter, you know, for so long, and the proof was never there. And then the Mandela effect came up, and I was like skipping in the streets, but nobody else knew about the Mandela effect but me, I felt, because I had to find you guys on YouTube. I couldn't find you in my family, in my friends, my circle of friends. Nobody was seeing the Mandela effect but me, until I found you guys.
That's so wild. And to bring up the Mandela effect, it's funny that, you know, my family, you know, have seen things and stuff, but my daughter, nobody ever really voluntarily talks about it, but my daughter bought this smart TV, and she was telling me she was looking around on some of the channels on there, and she found the Looney Tunes network. It's actually the Looney Tune network, but it's still spelled T-O-O-N, and it plays a lot of the old, what do you call it when the copyright runs out on something?
Oh, yeah, public domain.
Yeah, public domain. It just plays the old public domain stuff. Now, it's spelled on the cartoons still the T-U-N-E-S, as it has changed to, but the actual channel is named Looney Tune, T-O-O-N, Looney Tune Network. So I thought that was odd. And you can even find reviews on it where they spell out the Looney Tune Network plays the Looney Tunes, and they spelled, you know, T-O-O-N-S like it used to be. So there's a lot of residue with it.
There's so much residue around that anybody on YouTube who tries to say this is false beliefs, you're all a bunch of nutters, this is crazy, it's not happening, I'm like, okay, you definitely are not looking at things around you, because you don't have to look very far to see that there's evidence of both ways, right?
Yeah. Well, that's that whole that's the double-edged effect of it, though. When they are so hell-bent on not believing in it, they'll just think of that as the reason people are confused. Well, look, they just misspelled it. That's why people don't know, because, you know, it works both ways when they don't realize. It's funny, but
and I'm like, why do you care so much about what I believe? Why does it make you angry that people believe in the Mandela effect? And I have to ask this. We've got so many people who we talk with that we actually appreciate and love, who are flat earthers, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to stay off of your topic. You're more than willing, you know, I don't mind what you believe. I'm not sure myself exactly what shape the earth is, because I'm looking at it from a quantum way. So does the earth even exist? It's just a wave, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of flat earthers, not the ones that we converse with in our communities, are really angry that the rest of the world doesn't see it as flat. And my thing is always, just because you don't see it or agree with it, just let other people believe what they want to believe. Let them see what they want to see. Don't get angry because people aren't validating your beliefs. It's enough that you believe it. That's enough. You don't need outside validation. So I guess I see people who are angry about the Mandela effect is not real are just insecure. They don't want it to be real. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they're doubting Thomases. Maybe doubting Thomas was angry.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like some people were like, I've been looking at this for a while, and you know, I used to believe in it, but now, and they've like talked themselves out of it, but they're still watching videos trying to convince themselves that it's not happening. And, you know, just until you have that 100% thing that you can't go back on, it's just, I know it's tough. You know, it took me a year, but
we should
what do you
do a video sometime on the Mandela effect, friend or foe. And we should just focus on, is it bad or is it good? What evidence supports that it's bad? What evidence supports that it's good? Because I don't see anything bad in it. I've always known that matter is made of waves. Therefore, matter can be changed, but you have to have the right mechanism to change it. And when it started changing all around me without my input, I was like, wow, that is really cool.
Oops. Sorry, I got you back there. Had my computer try to do an update. Yeah, definitely. What was I thinking? Oh, I saw a movie on Netflix called, it was called The Discovery. It had Robert Redford in it. It just came out like last year. Have you heard of that movie?
No.
Okay, well, it's basically Robert Redford's the scientist that discovers he can see consciousness leave the body or see something leaving the body at the time of death. And this discovery caused worldwide suicides. I mean, it reached into the millions. They even had counters everywhere where people were just committing suicide just to exit the planet. And it made me realize just how fragile the human psyche is. The human, you know, just the human beings are just so fragile that, you know, some of them, with discovering the Mandela effect, would probably, you know, freak out a little bit. It would just be too much for their brains. And I thought, with that whole idea that whenever it's going to be harmful to you, you don't seem to see it, maybe it applies to people that just couldn't handle seeing it.
That's really a good point. I will definitely look up that movie, because I never thought of this before. I've always seen the organized religions as being unnecessarily negative, like oppressive. And yet, think about it. If every single human being knew that they're immortal and that when they leave this body, they still live, wouldn't a lot more people commit suicide than currently do? Doesn't that negative religion of control scare them into staying here longer?
Right, because if the alternative is to go, the alternative is that you're going to burn in hell the moment you kill yourself, then that would be worse. So you're like, well, I guess I'll stick around. I don't want to end up in hell or whatever.
Yeah, but if you knew that you wouldn't go to hell, because there isn't a heaven and a hell, heaven and hell are within you, and you bring them wherever you go. So the earth can be your heaven, the earth can be your hell, your relationship, your marriage can be a heaven, it can be a hell. You know, everything you experience can be a heaven or a hell because you bring it with you into the experience. So once you realize that, wouldn't people be like, oh, I've had enough of this. Poof, I'm gone. You know, so maybe those dogmatic, controlling, oppressive religions served a really good purpose in keeping people on this planet for longer so that they could learn more, grow more. You know, I always see this as like a school, and we're going to graduate off of Earth. You know, at some point, there's got to be somewhere else to go. You know, I kind of look at this as like, you know, the lessons that we learn here help us so that we don't have to come back here and repeat it.
That's always been my fear. I mean, besides not wanting to take my own life because I wouldn't want to hurt my family or anything like that, I would, you know, like if I was a single guy, I still wouldn't kill myself because I think, what if I ended up back at the starting line again and I had to do it all over again? And I think, gosh, I'm like probably halfway there, you know, why ruin that? So, yeah, I've never been.
I can't figure out is the amnesia. I just don't get why there's amnesia, but I'm not going away. Stay there.
Okay.
This is the best book on reincarnation I've ever read. Can you guys see it?
Near death. Whoops, I messed it up by talking. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, who's the author with that?
The author is P.M.H. Atwater, if that comes up.
Yep.
So it's as dry as bones, this book, because she's a researcher. And that's why I love it, because she left her personality out of it. And she takes 4,000 near-death cases and puts it into this book so that you can compare what children experienced when they came back, what adults experienced, what Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists experienced. And basically, if you read the 4,000 examples, they're not all in that book, they're summarized. Children never have a negative near-death experience. They always go to a heaven-like place and see angels and beautiful things. And it's only adults, 15%, experience a negative hellish type place first, and then move into a heaven-like place, and then came back.
It's
85%. Yeah.
Probably baggage they drug along with them, but continue.
Exactly. 85% of us, we pass go and, go straight to free parking. We go straight to heaven. And she said the only thing that, and those who are Christians see Christ often, not all the time. Those who are Islamic, they see Muhammad, and Buddhists see Buddha. So it's whatever religion you were raised in, that's the religious figure who might greet you in your heaven-like place, as well as dead loved ones or angels. So there's commonalities there, and it's all based on what you expect. If you think, I've been a good person, I've had a good life, I deserve to go to heaven, and you have a near-death experience based on what you think you deserve is what you get, which is mind-blowing, because there are true narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths who are hurting other people who still think that they deserve heaven. Well, are they going to go to heaven? Yeah. Is it, you get what you expect to experience in between lives before you leave your body. It's really interesting.
Well, that brings up a part of the I am stuff that kind of caught my attention. The part where it said that nothing good comes from the astral realms and that children don't go there, they go to the etheric realms. Do you remember reading that part?
I did, and that's the only part that I actually couldn't process, because I think because it was written in the 1930s, they consider the astral realm where ghosts dwell, because there was a lot of spiritualism then, and they called spiritualists people who contacted dead people from the astral realm. But we've moved so far beyond that we consider the astral realm emotional and the etheric realm mental. We don't consider it a place where dead spirits go. I found that interesting, because now a spiritualist today is somebody interested in spirituality. It's not a person who contacts dead people and talks to dead people, is it?
No, and I found it interesting that a lot of it seemed like he was talking to people of the era, like because I guess that was during one of the world wars. I'm not a history buff, so I don't know, but 1930s. You could tell it was during a time when patriotism was a big thing.
Yeah.
And
he said communism was evil, didn't he?
Right. So I guess that was right around Hitler time or earlier.
It was right between the two world wars. It was right after World War I and right as World War II was about to start, when these discourses were written according to the dates on them.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It was between them. It seemed like it was a little too early for World War II, but too late for World War I. But yeah, because I knew like Popeye came out during that same era in between.
Oh yeah.
The Popeye the Sailor Man, the sailor and
spinach and whatever her name was.
I went to art school, so everything has to do with art. But yeah, so I was noticing that, and I noticed that just the way he was talking was almost geared towards, I mean, it even took me a while to realize that when he said the outer, he was actually talking about, what we realize when we're looking out of our eyes and experiencing life with our senses, that he's talking about what we think of as just reality is that outer part, and then the inner was everything else. It's like you go in to get beyond the outer, which is what we were talking about today, that it's all happening within your consciousness, and that's where you make your choices, and then your world around you reflects your inner choices. Exactly. So I might have met you because I chose to act as if I was divine energy on earth, and to try to be loving, compassionate, and forgiving. Mm-hmm. And when I make a mistake, I auto-correct. It doesn't mean I'm perfect and I'm God. And then that meant that I could bump into you because you're doing the same thing. Your consciousness is choosing
the same. So I find like, I'd say like 95% of the discourse completely resonates with me. It sounds totally like what I've read elsewhere and what I believe, and some of it's new.
Hmm.
And I find it flavored by 5 or 10% of society at the time,
Yeah.
societal beliefs. Yeah, in the 30s.
Yeah, like the whole women will be happy about being able to. I think that might have been in the 10th one, but you could
I'm
tell
looking forward to that one.
it was talking about women would be able to basically keep their houses clean with their mind or something like that. But it
Oh
was,
no, no, I heard that one. I did.
oh,
That
okay.
I just have to see 10. I've gotten through 9 of them, and that just made me giggle. I mean, it made me laugh, and I thought, boy, I would love to do that. Just poof, my house is clean, so I can get on with other things.
And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, I'd love to do that. My wife comes home and I can, have the house clean, and just do it with my mind.
You know, I wonder what we're going to write, because you and I and the seekers out there, the spiritual seekers, are always looking for material to read in order to grow. But maybe we need to start writing the material to grow. Maybe at some point we have to say, okay, we've read enough. Now let's see what we can come up with. You
That's a
know?
good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you were actually talking about the title of the book that we were playing. Is that a secret, or can we talk about it? Or
Well, yeah, I'm a retired journalist, and I did a lot of my own work, and I did a lot of editing of other people's work. So I was thinking, I asked you first, and I said, let's get some of our. There's 2 ways to approach it. You can either write the material fresh, or we can just transcribe some of our best videos.
yeah.
And I want to put it out self-published on Amazon, because I've been meeting people who do not watch YouTube. They tend to be a little bit older than you, I think. How old?
Right.
You look so young. I couldn't even believe that you have a grandchild.
Yeah, I was born in '74, so I'm
Okay, so yeah, and I was born in 61. So they tend to be older people who are not connected to YouTube, who are constantly buying books, mostly through Amazon because it's cheaper and there's not many booksellers available anymore. So I was thinking, wow, there's a whole audience out there that we're missing. Let's put together a self-published book on what we do
hmm.
and put it on Amazon and see if anybody picks up on it out there. So I was thinking of approaching a few other channels too, but we'll keep that a secret until they say yes.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. And I think even for people who do watch YouTube, you have there's people that they have that they might want to buy it as a gift, or just to put it in someone's hands that isn't on the
Oh, that's
internet. Maybe they don't
exciting.
even, because a lot of times they want to talk to somebody about something. They don't want to really hear it, but maybe if you put a book in their hand and they like to read books, you just never know, put some
Yeah, for
examples in
Christmas or their birthdays. If you want to understand me, read this book,
there. Really?
and then we can talk.
Exactly. But
It's not an expensive project, and it's a very quick thing. It's, not going to be War and Peace or anything like that, but just to bring these topics to a different audience who are not connected on YouTube at all, and they would never think of going there for information. Because they think it's like young people's music videos. That's, they have this old viewpoint of YouTube. They don't realize how expanded YouTube has become with news, information, spirituality, music, art, you name it. It's all here.
yeah, and I've got I'd say probably a majority of my viewers are older than me, and just they're hip older people that have technology. You know what I mean? So
Exactly. So, yeah, it's just an idea for 2018. So we can talk more about it and then let people know when it's basically ready to go.
well, I'm going to continue on with these I Am discourses, and I think we should get together maybe after the next 10, or
I love it. I love the discourses. And again, I'm taking out of it what I'm seeking. And if there's something that I can't relate to in it because it relates to 1934, I don't let that color my opinion of it. I don't go, oh, it's all a bunch of rubbish because it says women should be cleaning, No.
Right. That's so easy to. I think we've sort of grown. Our crowd anyway has grown beyond that sort of throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Because we've done it so much already, and we've reached this point now where we're like, well, things aren't working the way I thought, so I better, at least consider something before I throw it out.
Yep, that's why I say I'm cool with flat earthers, because I don't know. I don't know if the Earth is round or flat or triangular, but I do know it's made up of waves. And I know waves can be pushed into any shape. So I'm like really unbiased and on the fence with that one.
Definitely. Thanks for naming, not dropping the name there. But okay, so everyone, this is Eileen from One Channel, and I do have her link at the very top of the description. Right under that, I have the link to the playlist to all of the I Am discourses that I've recorded so far. And that link will be good for any that I add to it. I'll keep putting them into that playlist. And I want to thank you, Eileen, for coming on with me.
Thank you, Shane. Thanks for asking me to come on. And thank you, everybody, for listening or viewing, whoever's out there. I'm sorry I can't see your comments, but when you're doing the show live, the comments are, you can't read them.
Yeah, I'm looking over to make sure I didn't miss anybody here.
I'm going to go back in and read them all for sure and say hi to everybody.
Okay, so we will join you guys in the chat for a few minutes before we head on out. But for now, thank you guys for joining, and have a good one.
Awesome. Love y'all. Bye. Bye, Shane.
Bye-bye.